So Adam Walton is a generational talent, and what these three graphs show is that when you plot every single midfielder in Europe's top 7 leagues this season for progressive passes adjusted for possession, against defensive metrics such as the volume of defensive duels they've won, possessions won both per 90, as well as the percentage of defensive duels they win as well, Adam Walton is consistently sitting towards the top right of the pack, showing that statistically he's one of the best progressive passing midfielders in Europe, whilst also excelling defensively as well. But what does this have to do with Ardon Jashari? Well, considering Walton's stylistic blend of a Busquets, Carrick-esque progressive passing regista, alongside having the defensive attributes, athleticism and tenacity of a ball winner like Owen Hargreaves, he would be absolutely perfect to partner one of Bruno Fernandes or Ugarte or even Casemiro in Amorim's midfield double pivot. However, with Crystal Palace surely commanding upwards of £75 million at least for Walton this summer, Club Brugge's soon-to-be 23-year-old Swiss midfielder Ardon Jashari on the surface initially seems like a very good stylistic alternative to Adam Walton, and it's because of this specific trait that both players share, which was also a trait that made Busquets and Carrick so good. Now I'll tell you what that specific trait is in just a minute, but in the rest of the video I'm going to be analysing Jashari as a player overall, both statistically and from the eye test, looking at whether he is the right tactical fit for what United need. Before I tell you who this Premier League player is, ranking in close proximity to Walton in all three of these graphs, as I think not only is this 24-year-old one of the most underrated players in world football right now, but I do think he could have the potential to fit the bill to be Bruno Fernandes' long-term replacement. But before I get into that, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to okjersey.com. They've got the new Manchester United releases for the upcoming season, with OK Jersey also allowing you to pick up high quality football shirts from just £15, plus free shipping across Europe for all orders over £45. They sent me over these new release alternative Manchester United jerseys from this season, as well as a long-sleeved retro home shirt from the 92-93 season, with Cantona 7 on the back, alongside this Nuno Gomes Benfica shirt from the 97-98 season as well. If you use code ALANTIS at checkout you'll get a discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comment section below. So Ardon Jashari, like Walton, shares the same disguised incisive passing technique that both Busquets and Carrick have mastered throughout their careers, and we saw Jashari produce this type of pass frequently against Aston Villa in the Champions League this season, where he drops wide and deep from a central area over to the left side, taking up a position in the middle third that resembles a left-sided centre-back in a back three. He is highly efficient at receiving the ball and then moving forward into the space in front of him, wherefrom he's constantly looking for a forward pass through the centre of the pitch, something which is highly valuable in the modern game, with most top-level coaches, including Ruben Amorim, having a possession strategy that is highly focused on playing through the centre of the pitch in the middle third, and Jashari, like Walton, is excellent at doing this, able to shape his body like he's going to play the pass wide of the opposition's right-sided midfielders, baiting them into shifting their body weight over to their right side as they anticipate the pass on their outside, before Jashari is able to close his hips on the ball at the last second, instead threading the ball on their inside into a teammate in a central position between the lines. And in general, when it comes to his quick, short and sharp passing, retention of the ball, as well as his forward and creative passing, these are Jashari's best attributes, and we can see this clearly by looking at the passing section of his FBref report from the Belgian Pro League this season, where he ranks in the low to mid-90s for pretty much every key possession retention, progressive passing and chance creation metric. Now he does have the capabilities of switching play or releasing runners in behind with a long pass from deep, but at the moment I would say that those longer passes can be very hit or miss, sometimes under hit or just over ambitious. Now from the eye test you can also see that he has the press resistance to receive the ball under pressure, something that is particularly useful in the build-up phase when he's required to receive the ball with his back to goal on the edge of his own box, and is able to play out with a series of short passes or through a deceptive turn of pace before then carrying the ball into the space. Now Jashari, like Walton, is more of a passer than a ball carrier, not having the same pace and power with the ball at his feet as say a Matthias Fernandes for example, but his technical ability alongside his low centre of gravity does enable him to wriggle out of pressure in tight spaces, and as you can see from his FBref report in the Belgian Pro League this season, he does rank highly for his carries into the final third and the percentage of dribbles he completes. However, the reason I don't see Jashari as a great fit for Ruben Amorim's midfield double pivot is that defensively, physically and athletically, he can be exposed when he's left in large spaces. Over shorter distances, when he's moving quickly to tenaciously get stuck into a challenge, Jashari can hold his own, but in 1v1 situations against a powerful ball carrier, as we saw against Aston Villa, he can struggle and often gets bypassed too easily, which is also reflected in his FB ref report, where in Belgium he ranks incredibly low for both the volume and the percentage of dribblers he's tackled, in just the 6th percentile for both, with his interceptions sitting around the median. And so whilst in possession both statistically and from the eye test, Jashari does have a similar passing ability to Walton. Overall, Walton is by far the most complete player, when also factoring in his physicality, athleticism and defensive ability, which are key for any central midfielder that United sign, due to playing a 2-man midfield rather than a 3-man midfield, and also likely having to be paired with Bruno Fernandes fairly frequently throughout next season, who probably is actually better defensively than Jashari is. Now, the Swiss international does have a lot of potential, but defensively, particularly in 1v1s either out wide or centrally, there is quite a lot of improvement needed. And in terms of his style of play, I just think he would be better suited to playing in a slightly slower possession-based league such as Serie A or La Liga, with less frequent quick transitions throughout a game, which will put him in these sorts of defensive situations less often than compared with the Premier League. On current ability, I do think a Real Betis or a Lazio would probably be the right level. Potential wise, I could see him doing well as a regista in a midfield 3, with athleticism and higher level defensive capabilities either side of him, somewhere like AC Milan, but I wouldn't rate him as highly potential wise as players like Matthias Fernandes, Angelo Stiller and certainly not Adam Walton. But this now brings me on to the Premier League player who was positioned in close proximity to Adam Walton in all 3 of those progressive passing defensive duels graphs, and that is Mikel Damsgaard. Now, in my video on Johan Wieser a few weeks ago, I spoke about how the best or the most wanted player at a mid-table club often has their value and hype around them inflated, whilst other players in the same team seem to go completely under the radar, simply because of their aesthetic as a player, or simply the lack of hype around them on social media, and Damsgaard is another perfect example of this. He's only 25 in July and was signed 3 years ago for just £12 million, with Brentford reportedly valuing him at around £35 to £40 million, which from both the eye test and particularly when analysing him statistically does seem like a very good deal, particularly when you look at the prices of players who play in the same position, such as Eze for example, at over £60 million, whilst also being 2 years older. This plot graph that I showed you at the start shows progressive passing adjusted for possession against defensive duels 1/90 for every Premier League midfielder, and you can see that Damsgaard not only sits second only to Walton for progressive passes, having played over double the amount of minutes this season, but also is a lot closer to the median for the volume of duels won than pretty much every advanced playmaker in the league. If you switch out the volume of defensive duels for the percentage won, both Walton and Damsgaard sit even further to the right as clear outliers, with it being a similar story for possessions 1/90. And the eye test certainly backs up his creative output, as Damsgaard is very Bruno Fernandes-esque in terms of his ability to see, and then being able to find those defence-splitting long passes and through balls, having excellent weight and direction on his passes in behind the back line. With the fact that from his FB ref report you can see that he ranks in the 98th percentile, the top 2%, when compared against every other Premier League attacking midfielder and winger, shows his quality in this specific area. Damsgaard, like Bruno, is definitely more of a progressive passer than a carrier, which can be seen by this plot graph which shows passes into the penalty box against passes into the final third, where Damsgaard ranks as the closest player to Bruno Fernandes, who himself is sitting as an outlier towards the top right, with Damsgaard also recording a greater volume of passes into both areas than the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, Cole Palmer and Phil Foden, showing how good a progressive passer he is. Now, he doesn't have the same powerful ball carrying ability of a Morgan Rogers or even a Matthias Fernandes, but when plotting progressive carries against ball carrying frequency, he still looks fairly competent, around the same amount of carries as Bruno Fernandes and sitting in close proximity to Morgan Gibbs-White and Dominic Szoboszlai. His dribbling ability is also better than most other central midfielders, recording a higher volume and percentage of dribbles than Kobbie Mainoo and Martin Odegaard, with the eye test showing that Damsgaard has the close ball control, quick footwork and fluidity in his movement to be able to wriggle out of pressure, making him more than competent press resistance wise when receiving the ball under pressure, either in the build-up phase or in the middle third. And so overall, for someone who is as complete as Damsgaard, both in and out of possession, being a high volume ball winner, a competent ball carrier and dribbler, As well as being one of the best in the league when it comes to his chance creation and ball progression statistically, whilst also being a quality crosser when out wide and dangerous when on set pieces, he has to be someone that United at least consider as a long-term Bruno Fernandes replacement. And if United were looking at Jashari this summer, for his likely price tag of between 25 to 30 million pounds plus add-ons, I think Damsgaard at 35 million with add-ons over 40 million pounds would be a far better deal. However, United need to be focusing on signing at least one, maybe two athletic, powerful central midfielders who specialise in ball carrying and ball winning. And so stylistically this summer anyway, I do think players like Thuram, Edison and Lamine Camara would be the priority ahead of Damsgaard and Jashari. So let me know what you think of Damsgaard and Jashari in the comment section below, and if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to okjersey.com. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a discount. I'll leave a link in the description and in the comment section below, and you can also check out the playlist I've just made as well, which I'll leave on the end screen now as well.